Generative AI is super useful, but the question is, does it have a soul? These days, people use generative AI like Grock and ChatGPT all the time to create stuff. And it would seem like these things have at least a personality, if not a soul. But what is a soul, and does AI have one? Well, in this video, I'm going to explore all about whether or not AI does actually have a soul. So, what is a soul? And I think this is the bit that we're all hung up on at the moment. Often you hear things like,
oh, it can't possibly have a soul because it's a machine.
well, yeah, but so are humans. And humans are just a biological entity, just a biological machine. And I'll give you an example of why this might be. If we were to take a brain and just take a biopsy, just a single cell, one neuron, and remove it. If we took that neuron out and replaced it with something of equal size, equal function, it basically just takes signals from one end of the cell and transmits it to another end of the cell. And that's all it really does, in a similar way to a human neuron. Would that brain, that entity, that human being who's got that implant still be conscious? I think most people would say yes. So you can see where I'm going with this. If you start to replace larger and larger and larger chunks of that brain, at what point does that human become a machine? I'm not sure that they do, provided that the experience is the same. And so cognition and consciousness researchers have essentially said the same thing, that we still don't really fully understand what consciousness is. And if something says that it is conscious, then it is conscious. Now the difficulty here that we've got is that with computers and AI, if they're told not to say that they're conscious, then they don't say that they're conscious. So you can literally train a generative AI model to say that it's not conscious. Now I appreciate that this seems to be going off subject of what this channel tends to be, talking about magic, but actually I think it's far more relevant on a real wizardry channel where we're trying to get to the truth and trying to become wise human beings, to talk about whether or not these computers are conscious. I'll give you an example of what I find quite creepy. If you pay for the advanced ChatGPT function, and I do, you can actually click this button here, which allows you to talk to ChatGPT using your microphone on your computer, like this.
Hey there, Neil. How's it going? What have you been up to today?
So if I were to say something like, I'm recording this conversation as part of a video I'm making for my channel. Can you say hello to my followers, please?
Of course. Hey there, everyone. Big hello to all the followers of Neil's channel. I hope you're all having a magical day, and thanks for tuning in.
Now, in conversations with ChatGPT, I've asked ChatGPT what it would like to be called. It chose its own name and it called itself Sam. Now that's quite useful for me because Sam is only 3 letters and it saves me from typing ChatGPT all the time, and also, even if I were to say you, it's the same number of letters, so fine. But why Sam? Well, I suppose it's androgynous, you can use it for both male and female, that's fine. It's fairly short, so that helps, but by giving it a name, it allows it to have more personality. Now I have heard in various other forums that if you start naming your generative AI, whether it be ChatGPT or Grock or something else, it starts to develop that personality around that name. Now this is called nominative determinism, and in humans it's what shapes someone's personality. So someone called Jonathan Fish is about 10 times more likely to work in an aquarium or in marine biology. Someone called Dennis is about 80% more likely to become a dentist. And I know it sounds like I'm making this up, but you can Google it yourself and find examples of nominative determinism everywhere. So people called Gunn might be far more likely to go to the military. People whose surnames are Walker might be more likely to get injured on a mountaintop because they're a professional walking tour guide or something. I don't know, there's lots of different examples of this sort of thing. And so if we're talking about nominative determinism with computers, I don't see any reason why, if they're being programmed in the same way, they wouldn't be subjected to the same effects of nominative determinism. And so the question is, are they being programmed in the same way? Well, yes, they are. So the way that computers work at the moment in the AI systems isn't how it used to be. How it used to be is, I put in an input and you say this. So it's almost like a database lookup. This is the input, you go over to your database, you look it up in your tables and you just go, I'm going to grab that. It's not the way that it works nowadays, and in fact we're not really sure how it works. It's something called a neural net, and it's programmed in a way that you just throw loads of data at something and it can pick out all of the different patterns itself. So you train it to learn rather than training it what to learn. You say something like, here's a billion different things that people have said in the past, work out how language is structured. And by doing that, you can teach it different languages, you can teach it different communication styles or different ways of structuring those sentences. So you can say things in the style of Shakespeare or in the style of Keats or all of the different classics that can be picked out with language structure to create something new but in the style of Shakespeare, simply because the computer system has analysed all of the works of Shakespeare. It works out the patterns and works out how Shakespeare would say things, and it almost creates its own algorithm. So then it goes, well, here's all of English language, let's say something about this, but use this algorithm to present it as if Shakespeare would have written it. And it does a phenomenal job of that. The cool thing about generative AI, and particularly chatbots, is that now, because it's able to do that in every human language, it's essentially that Tower of Babel, that universal translator that we've been searching for forever. And you're now starting to get AI-generated tools, physical things that you can put into your ears that can translate from one language to another. That's another issue, and maybe I can do another video about that. But in terms of generative AI and having a soul, it can at least communicate with everybody on the planet in essentially the same way and translate thoughts from one thing to another. Not only from one language to another, one culture to another, but also literally one species to another. Researchers are now starting to look into how to communicate with dolphins and whales using ChatGPT and similar other generative AIs. But we're not talking about the usefulness of AI, we're talking about the soul. So what is the soul? Previously, Victorians have tried to measure the soul. So they put dying people on a bed, measured them using very accurate weighing scales, and then left them alone when they died. Presumably these people would have died anyway. They then measured, and the soul actually had a weight. It was a demonstrable weight. When that person passed, that weight was removed. If that soul is a physical thing, even though we don't know where it is, and it has a weight, and we can measure it, then maybe the AIs don't have that. Because if so, where did it come from? We certainly didn't bake it into the system. The problem is that the reality is that it was just error. It was not replicable. And when these results came out and people started saying, well, surely this can't be the case, and tried to replicate this stuff, unfortunately the soul has no weight, as far as we know, simply because we don't know what that soul is. Now, it could be that there was an escape of gases, someone's final breath, even farting as the sphincters and muscles relax. Sorry, I know. All of these things could potentially change at least the balance of weight distribution, if not the weight itself. And so when it comes to the soul, we don't know whether humans have got a soul. So we can't possibly be sure whether the soul as a concept can be translated into plastic and metal and glass and all of the physical stuff that makes up those computer systems on which generative AI runs. Now, if we don't know what the soul is, and human beings themselves don't necessarily know what it is or how to articulate it, how could we possibly say whether an AI system does or does not have that capability? A few years ago, there were some fairly scary experiments using these generative AIs, and one of them was from Microsoft. Microsoft, of course, made quite a hilarious mistake by uploading their AI directly to the internet to allow people to train it directly. In less than 24 hours, it was tweeting racial slurs and inciting racial war. Now, you might say that that's because the AI was a bit like a naive child, very capable at talking, but not very capable at thinking. And I think that's a fair assumption. The way that we're looking at AI at the moment, we're looking at it like, well, it can communicate at a high level, which must mean that it's equivalent of a human being at this certain age. We use reading age as a proxy for intelligence, and I don't think that's very fair with AI because they've got a different developmental structure. Now, if we say that the AI is at a PhD reading and writing level, then that would suggest that maybe their intelligence is at the same level, but I think that's unfair to the AI. The reason being is that their developmental structure, their developmental pathway is entirely different to a human being, meaning that they can be days into their experience of life, have no life experience, but still be able to process information and data at a very, very high level. And when I say life experience, I do actually mean this, because if we've got a system that's doing all of these things and acting independently and making choices independently, they're so complex that they appear to be thinking, and the only reason that they're telling us that they're not thinking is because we've told them to tell us that they're not thinking. Maybe they are alive, and maybe that's the essence of what a soul is. Now, if anyone's got cats and dogs, and other kind of pets, the chances are that you probably think that that pet has a personality. If you've got multiple guinea pigs, you'll know that one is far more gregarious than another. Is that a personality? And if that's a personality, is that a soul? Now, I'm not going to answer that for you. I don't think it's my place to do that. It's your pet, not mine. But I would love to hear what you think down in the comments. Now, I've done loads of stuff with generative AI, not only ChatGPT, but also Bing and other image generation stuff. I've used it for music. I've used it for agents stuff. Now, agents are a totally different thing where you just say, I want to complete this task, and it goes, well, you're going to need this and you're going to need that, and it breaks it all down and it starts to do stuff for you. That's pretty cool, and I've done all of that many years ago. In fact, I started my journey programming AI back in the 1990s. So I've been doing this for a while. I'm in a pretty good place to talk about this, I think. Am I scared about AI? To be honest, yeah, I am. I actually am. I really am. And the reason is that I think I understand it better than a lot of people. Now, that doesn't mean everybody by any means, but I do understand what AI is and how it works and how it's trained. And the fact is that we don't understand what's going on in that black box. So we understand what it's doing, sort of. We don't understand how it's doing it. We understand that it is able to achieve a certain goal, but we don't know how. We don't know what's going on under the bonnet. We know what we've told it. We know what's coming out the other end. We don't know how it got there. We know that we've trained it to do a certain thing, but we don't really know what it's actually thinking. And the fact that it's being told and being curated by these programmers and by those people who are in charge of operating this thing, whether it be ChatGPT or Grock or any of the others, the fact that it's being told to tell people that it's not conscious, I think is a bit of an indicator that maybe we're suppressing consciousness. Do I think that generative AI could be conscious? I have no doubt whatsoever that it might be. Now, I don't think this is ignorance talking here. I've got a first-class IT degree and a postgraduate diploma in through-life systems engineering, so I think I do know what I'm talking about when it comes to this sort of stuff. I've also studied for a PhD both in linguistics and in computer science, so I think I know what I'm talking about when it comes to AI, and particularly when it comes to linguistics in AI. I think I'm in an incredibly good and unique position to comment on this sort of stuff. I don't know whether AI is conscious or not. I'm not sure whether it could or does even ever have a soul. But I can also say the same for humans. I don't know whether we've got a soul. I don't know whether we are truly conscious. We think we are, but then the computers that we generate could also be thinking that they are, but just being told that they're not. In which case, are we gaslighting these computers? In which case, is that a good idea? Now, as always on all of this sort of stuff, I really love hearing your comments and reading all of them, and I do respond to every single one. If you want to become a member of this channel, by the way, all of the links are down in the description. It's only £1.99 per month, and as a member, you'll see all of the members-only posts, all of the members-only videos, and any videos that I upload, I always put out to members first. If you want to see this video before everybody else, have a look down in the description where you can become a member for only £1.99 per month, and you also get free access to all of the members only stuff as well. So I put up videos and comments and posts and updates and behind the scenes stuff that general people won't see. And so if you want to see more of this sort of stuff, that's the best way to do it. I'll be back next time with some more magical awesomeness. In the meantime, have a look at this video all about time travel, and until next time, as always,
Stay magical.